Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you for attending our Community Connections webinar series. Today, we're talking about integrating third-party products with Koha. This is so exciting. We're really going to dive into the third-party products that Koha works with today, and be prepared to be amazed. My name is Kelly McGilligot, and I'm here representing Bywater Solutions. I work with the sales team to talk a lot about Koha and all the open source products that we support. And today we're going to focus on Koha and those third-party products. So thanks again for joining us. We are recording this. All our recorded webinars can be found on our YouTube channel, and they are organized by playlist and also by product. So feel free to dive in there at any point. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about Bywater Solutions. We have this fantastic picture on the left. This is our systems team, and they really do an honest to goodness great effort in integrating a lot of these products with your Koha system. So we should give them a round of applause for all that they do, because not only do they have to be knowledgeable about Koha, but they also have to be knowledgeable about all these third-party products that we work with, as well as any future connections that we have. Before we dive in, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Bywater Solutions and why we are who we are. Thanks for the round of applause. We were started 15 years ago. It's our 15th anniversary this year, so yay for Bywater. We were started by our CEO, Brendan, who was working as a librarian with a proprietary software, and he was frustrated with the support he was receiving. So thus began the beginning of Bywater Solutions, and one of his big goals when creating Bywater Solutions was creating that support that was fully comprehensive and honest. When looking at products to support, open source seemed like a great fit for his goals, because it also gives us that flexibility in technology through open source software. It's really much more flexible and open to other products. And thus that's why we started with the open source world. For anyone who is not familiar with Koha, Koha is the world's first free and open source library system. We are fully featured. Everything that Koha has, you will have if you go ahead and download that, which is free and available to anybody. It's also very scalable and completely web-based. So think of the potential of something that is scalable, meaning if you're a small library or you're a super large library, it has the potential to do all that, as well as it's completely web-based, no clients, no software to install. It can have simultaneous hundreds of users at the same time. The other key to the Koha is that it is built by librarians for librarians. So this was created in 1999 in New Zealand by some librarians who were concerned with Y2K and how it was going to affect their current software, as well as just the rising cost of what they were paying for that proprietary software. So these librarians got together and created Koha, which has grown exponentially since 1999, and it's fantastic to see how much it can do, as well as what we're going to talk about today, how much it's going to be able to connect to other third-party vendors. You know, it's really an interesting kind of approach, is that you're not locked in to Koha as this one entity. You're able to use Koha and then subscribe to these other vendors to fit the needs of your library. So you have the power to pick and choose what works best for your library when it comes to things like account management or patron engagement, versus just picking one software and having to kind of compromise in what they have to offer. So think of it that when you're thinking about just software in general, and just that lock-in that sometimes we have and we don't really feel like it's a good feeling. So Koha can interfere with third-party products, and therefore is vendor agnostic, meaning there's no limit. And what I'd love for you to do is if you are using Koha and you have a vendor that I've not mentioned and you want to reach out to us, please do. We're always looking to advance on how Koha is using, as well as there's libraries out there that are really looking to the future and how they're going to help their patrons and their community and have maybe found the best, software that they can use and want to be able to connect it to Koha, making it easier for their librarians and the staff and patrons. Okay, I'm going to throw out some big words here. And really, honestly, these are not really that important to remember. But when you are looking at vendors and to see if they are connected or can be connected to Koha, these are some great words to think about. And you know that Koha does act as a Z39 and SRU server. It is SIP2 compliant. It supports ILSDI, INSIP, OAI, PMH, and also has an extensible REST API. When thinking about hey, does Koha work with this product? If you're Googling it and it says it connects through a SIP, you're like, bam, Koha can do that. If it connects through INSIP, bam, Koha can do that. So these are really great words to remember, but not have to know exactly what they do, but just know that these are connections that Koha can make. Oops, we went the wrong way. Okay, so we're going to dive into some of the great products that Koha can connect to. Enough about how we can make this happen. Let's talk about what we do. So if we're looking at things like account management, Koha can help track what your patrons owe in the system. And these are the 6 vendors that we currently work with. Most of the connection with these providers are through a SIP connection. So one of those keywords I mentioned a minute ago. And this allows the systems to talk to each other, that SIP connection, and verify patron information. PayPal, for example, is a plugin that gets installed into your Koha system. You set up your PayPal details, how you want that to look on your patron's bill from PayPal, and also how it's going to look on the OPAC. So they'll have a little PayPal button, and they're going to click that if they owe fines through the OPAC and be able to pay those fines through PayPal. Once that payment's been made, that SIP connection can be able to come on over to the Koha staff side, and we'll be able to see how that the patron has paid on the staff side, as well as the OPAC, the patron side, will be updated as well. So just think, same thing with a lot of these others, Nelnet and PayGov and Fizz. Again, they are all built on plugins to be able to communicate to Koha. Now, plugins are really, really useful in working with vendors because every vendor has a little bit of special sauce involved. So if we have a plugin that's installed through Koha, meaning it's not built in Koha proper, but it allows updates and changes to be made outside of the normal Koha upgrade schedule. So if PayPal goes ahead and makes a change, we're able to make that change in our plugin without having to wait for a Koha upgrade schedule. So that's just a little sneak peek at why we use plugins for these vendor-specific connections. Something like unique management services, we are able to talk to unique management services if you're using Gentle Nudge or MessageBee, where we're able to go ahead and send out reports for patrons that owe money to the library, and that gets sent over to that unique, all without library interaction. So there's no time on the staff side. It's just automatic reports going over to the unique side. And that's a great thing to start thinking about, is why we're using these third-party vendors is for less staff work and that complete integration and not having to have too many hands in the pot. E-resources. This is absolutely patron driven here. Our Koha OPAC has the ability to connect with ebook vendors. So think about who's using Overdrive, I guess it should say Libby now, or Hoopla, or Recorded Books, or Cloud Library. You can set up, again, using plugins through the Koha system to be able to allow your patrons to find material within the Koha OPAC without ever leaving the Koha OPAC. So if they go ahead and search for the newest Emily Henry book, they'll be able to see that the library has it in physical format, as well as it's also available in Overdrive in that one search. In addition, patrons can go ahead and place it on hold, check it out directly from the Koha OPAC, as well as see those checkouts within their patron account on the OPAC as well. So in their patron account, they're able to see they have physical books checked out, as well as items through Overdrive or Cloud Library or Hoopla recorded books. So it's a great one-stop shop for your patrons to be able to find those resources that you're paying good money for, whether that's in print or those e-resources. And this connectivity is through an API. Again, one of those magic words we talked about earlier. Okay, let's dig into cataloging. For our technical services crew, we have lots of connections that allow us to import and edit MARC records. Think about that OCLC connection. For those libraries using OCLC connection, you have the ability right from your OCLC connection desktop to directly export a record right into Koha. And that's just F5. That's as simple as that. It will come right over to the Koha staff interface. We have a BT cat, which allows for librarians to search their BT cat for records and then seamlessly send them right over to Koha through an API. MARC Edit has the ability to search via Z39 to your Koha catalog records. You can make those edits in your MARC Edit and then send those right back. Think of the possibilities. I just want to pause right here, and maybe your mind is like, how am I ever going to figure this out? How do I know what I'm doing? Let's go back to the picture of our systems team. They, as well as our education and our support team, will work with you and those vendors. We have worked with a lot of these vendors for years. We know their setup. We know a lot of them by their first name, and we're able to talk and get those setups done for the library pretty quickly. So it is not something, if you're supported by Bywater, it is not something you're going to have to do on your own. We are going to certainly take the reins in making these setups very seamless for the library. So remember that. Super important. Okay. Now, for all those maybe academic or more specialty libraries that are looking for using some sort of authentication as their way to log into the OPAC, there are many options that you have. You have single sign-on options, which allow your patrons to be able to log in to the OPAC connecting to that single sign-in, such as Google Authentication or that Shibboleth, One Login, Azure. This allows you to be able to seamlessly have your patron log into one login, username and password, and then it will give them access to either the OPAC or further past the OPAC to maybe external resources that your library has. So think about this as we all have these kind of almost one username and password that we'd like to use for lots of things. Think of it that for those academics, that the one way that they're going to sign into a lot of their college campus systems, they also can use that for logging into the patron side of the OPAC. Also, there are ways that we can set up patron imports. Again, talking to those academics or libraries that do have a load of records load of patrons that you need to import into the Koha system. You can certainly do that. And we work with Active Directory and Banner for things like that. And again, no librarian's hands have to touch a CSV. It's all coming through an FTP site. We grab it from that FTP site. We import those. And we do those matching rules. We talk to you about how do you want to import these patrons? Are we matching on something? Are we overlaying? So there is a little bit of work to set it up. But again, we have your back. We can definitely work with you when you're doing any of these setups. So please do not feel that you are alone in this. So again, lots of ways that you can have that authentication work within the system. Okay, wow, there's a lot here. I think there's 12. EDI ordering. Koha uses the EDIFACT standard for electronic ordering. And again, we're going to talk a little bit about plugins because each plugin will be specific to the vendor. So if you're working with 3 or 4 of these, we can absolutely do that. We will set up those plugins to be able to talk to Koha using those specific terms that maybe Baker and Taylor uses, but Ingram doesn't. So everyone, again, has that special sauce that's going to make it happen. But what we're doing is we're streamlining it, where we're going to get that information, put that into that plugin, and make it easier for your librarians. Really, the whole premise of EDIFACT ordering is it's going to simplify workflows for librarians and making the communication between the vendor and the library easy and seamless. If you're not familiar with EDI ordering, in a typical workflow, a library will go ahead and stage an order through one of these vendors, Baker and Taylor or Ingram, and then they will go ahead and download that order file and send it over to the Koha system. Then once that order is loaded into Koha, it's going to send back some information to the vendor because we're going to go and do some matchy-matchy. And then once that order has been sent through that FTP site, Koha can verify the information that's coming from those vendors and do a little bit of housekeeping, such as maybe marking those items from ordered to in processing, or update the prices, or add those shipping costs up to date with those vendor invoices. So think about all that kind of busy work that our technical services crew does. A lot of that can be really streamlined using EDIFACT ordering. Again, we are happy to work with any other vendors if they are not listed on here. Remember that we are free and open to talk to any other vendor to help the library work through that process. We want to save librarians time and then have them be able to really work with their patrons and community as much as possible. Okay, messaging and phone. We know how important it is to reach out to our patrons, letting them know great things about maybe they have a hold ready to be picked up, or hey, don't forget to return your items before those fines accrue. Koha can seamlessly integrate with these vendors that I have listed, such as Twilio, Shoutbomb, which I mean, like, isn't that the cutest little Shoutbomb guy? Unique and Itiva, to be able to let your patrons know whether they're using SMS or email or those phone messages. We absolutely can work with those vendors. I mean, how many of us have our cell phone with us at all times, whether we're at the grocery store or the playground? Now, using maybe one of these vendors, your patrons can get those messages directly to their phone or email, letting them know the library's good news. Now, of course, Koha has its own notification system that will also send out email and SMS. But again, if you are working with one of these vendors, know that Koha can integrate with these providers. A little side note, in the Koha Tools module, librarians can customize the messages that these providers use to notify your patrons. So you are still able to determine what is the terminology and the information that you're sending out to those patrons, and those providers that you're using are going to use that information from those notices. So you're not losing out on the capability of customizing your notices. You're just really seamlessly using a different provider to go ahead and send those, whether that's through your phone or your email or your SMS. Okay, some integrated services. We're thinking about, as we go to the future, just how we're reaching out to our users on different platforms, whether we're talking to them through patron engagement or marketing messaging. We want to make sure that we also, as the Koha system, we're able to help these other providers such as Communico or Patron Point or Solus or My Libro to be able to get the information that they need to send out these emails to your patrons. Now, these are set up through an API. And we will, again, work with you to set up these API connections because it's really important to us that we make sure the information that these vendors is getting is the information you want them to get about your patrons. So we're going to help you kind of get through that like murky water of like, what does this Communico need from my Koha system and how is it going to be used? It's really important that that API information is just not all inclusive. We want to make sure that we're only sending out the correct information that's going to be go to this third party. You know, they're able to send out newsletters or those top 5 marketing or new events happening in your library, or even sending notices or verifying patrons. There's a lot of things that these services do outside of the ILS, but also want to use the ILS as kind of that platform. And again, this is through APIs. If there is an integrated service out there that you are looking at using that is not listed, of course, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. Okay, self-service, you know, talking about like those self-checkout machines, those gates, RFID, kiosks, all those things that help your library get materials into your patrons' hand and them out the door as quickly as they want to go out. Although for me, I always want to hang out in my library longer. But there's vendors such as Envisionware or Biblioteca, FE Technologies or MK Solutions, TechLogic, MeScan, or Cassie. These are connected via SIP. And we will work together to connect Koha to these vendors to make sure your information is set up. There is a SIP connection that we're going to be able to work with. So again, verifying those patron information. When your patron walks up to a Biblioteca self-checkout machine, you want to make sure they scan their library card. It's going to be sent over to Koha to read that information and be like, yep, they're in, you know, they're okay to check things out. And then Biblioteca can start that process. Think about those, you know, material handling systems where things are getting returned. You want to make sure they're getting returned through the material handling system, they're getting checked in and they're getting removed from the patron's account, but they're also doing different things like triggering holds. Though that communication via SIP is all going to be set up through the vendor. So again, you can feel great about having your patrons use those self-checkout kiosks, you using those RFIDs or those gates, as well as those material handling systems, because they're going to be super seamless. And again, help your librarians. Okay, interlibrary loan services are also known as ILL. Whether this is through a statewide service or a library consortium, the interlibrary loan system can be connected to Koha via multiple targets. It can be done through a Z39.50 connection call or integration with an ILL product. Koha is NCIP compliant. So that's NCIP, what we talked about in one of those first slides. We use this protocol to connect to services such as Clio, Iliad, which is an OCLC product, InReach, which is a III product, Navigator, which is an OCLC product, ShareIt, mostly through Autographics, and Easy Borrow, which is kind of like a Northeastern product. When we set up these connections to these third-party products, each connection is going to be a little different. But in most aspects, you're going to have like an ILL patron category, an ILL item type, an ILL framework. And this will allow you to essentially create some information in your Koha system and be able to keep track of that information, whether you're the borrower or the receiver of material. What is great about this is all this can be reportable. So you're able to report on, track who has what and which patrons have your material or you have sent out, and also suppress material from the OPAC if necessary. So thinking about, you know, just that process of being able to get material for your patrons outside of what you have physically in your collection. And again, working with all these different products is great because then you're able to do this almost seamlessly, being able to help your patrons as well as your staff. Okay, let me go back one slide because I don't want you to see that yet. Overall, what is important to take away from this webinar is that Koha can connect to a wide variety of vendors on various platforms with various connections. Our Bywater team, not only this, the systems team that I had a picture of, but the entire Bywater team will work with libraries to connect to any of these vendors and also assist wherever needed when looking at new vendors. This is part of our support package. There are no additional fees to connect to these vendors. We will do this as part of our support and hosting fee. So know that it's all inclusive. We will do this because that is what we want to do. We want to provide the best support to our libraries. If you have a vendor that you'd like to connect to and you want us to work with them, please feel free. So if you are a library, a Bywater partner currently, and you're just going, oh my gosh, I really didn't realize that maybe Koha can connect to this vendor, reach out. Please reach out. Something to note, we do have some upcoming webinars both on the Aspen side as well as Koha, but I did want to mention, please keep an ear out because coming in July, we are going to be talking to somebody from BT Cat to talk about that connection. And then also in August, we are going to be talking with FE Technologies in a webinar. So just kind of, I think we're calling it Power and Partnerships, our next webinar series, but really just think about, we're putting the party in partnership, right? So it'll be super fun. But upcoming in June, we are going to talk about the Aspen Discovery Web Builder, June 11th at 3 p.m., as well as in June 20th, the top features in Koha. So if this is your first time joining us for one of these Koha webinars, feel free to register for others. We're happy to have you. Again, these are all available on our YouTube channel. And if you do have any questions or any thoughts, or want to talk to us further, please contact us, sales@bywatersolutions.com, and we're happy to assist.